Gen 3 was, in many ways, a turning point for the Pokémon franchise, introducing many features that are to this day considered staples in the games. These changes range from simple stuff such as double battles to more core things such as abilities and even natures, and were mostly appreciated by everyone. Except by Slacking, I guess. That guy got absolutely shafted by its ability. Wild to think about how different the games were back in Gen 1 and 2, huh? Then, not satisfied in completely changing up how the games worked, Game Freak went and released a definitive version of Ruby and Sapphire, Pokémon Emerald. It too introduced new things, most notably the Battle Frontier, one of the most beloved features of any Pokémon game that would eventually become cause for frustration as Game Freak just refuses to bring it back in new titles. Anyway, the point is, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald were great games. As such, is it really a shock that the Gen 3 remakes, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, were great games? I mean, I guess seeing what happened to Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, it is absolutely possible to mess up a remake, so maybe the Gen 3 remakes being good is a bit shocking to some of you. But still, they were awesome, and again, they introduced a lot of new things, though admittedly not as heavy-hitting and game-defining as the OG Gen 3 games. ORAS gave us the ability to soar through the sky on one of the Eon duo, which is absolutely amazing. It turned Malville City into a cube. It introduced capitalism to Sea Malville by making a worker ask for donations to maintain the place, and it even gave us the hilariously iconic "Too much water" quote. Thanks again for that, IGN. Okay, I might be taking the piss with how I phrased some of those features, but the core of what I'm saying is true. Sea Malville is absolutely awesome now, with lots of documents to find and a questline of sorts culminating in a storage room full of nuggets. Actual Malville, aka the city, feels like one of the largest cities we've gotten so far, even though I still maintain its cube-like structure is weird. But the area in which Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire most delivered was, in my opinion, the lore. They explored so much of the origins of Mega Evolution, and even managed to explore Kalos too in the process. Furthermore, the Delta episode was absolutely humongous for the fanbase, effectively confirming, and please mute me for the next 5 seconds if you don't want spoilers, the existence of a Pokémon multiverse. This is all to say that Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were really good remakes that introduced many good changes to the original Gen 3 titles. But in this video, I would like to focus on one very underrated set of changes brought by the remakes and compare them to their original version. These changes vastly improved the specific character's, well, characterization, and made him much better in the remakes than in the originals. We're talking about Wally, of course. However, despite being a character I quite like, I still see a mixed reception to Wally due to many points that seem very valid. He did, after all, have a very lackluster role in the original games. As such, I decided to make this video and look at what changed in the remakes, and most importantly, whether or not these changes make him a good rival for the player in the story. At the end of the day, this will come down to personal opinion, but my idea is to give you food for thought via a breakdown of his appearances, changes, and my interpretation of them, and hopefully by the end you'll feel inclined to comment your opinions on the character. I love talking about games after all, and Wally seems as good a topic as any to talk about. So, welcome to a hopefully great video about our green-haired friend Wally. Before we get started on what changed with the boy, I think it's important to answer one question. Where's Wally? Sorry, I mean who's Wally? It also just strikes me that if you're from one of the many countries that decided to arbitrarily rename Wally to Waldo, Charlie, Walter, or whatever, this gag made absolutely no sense to you, but oh well. Just know the character was originally called Wally and appreciate my unfunny reference for what it is, okay? Anyway, back to Pokémon. Introduced in Ruby and Sapphire, Wally is a green-haired boy that serves as one of the player's rivals throughout the game. Though I will admit I have some issues with even calling him a rival, as I'll explain later on. Wally was a first for a lot of things in the franchise, most notably the first rival to not use a starter Pokémon, and the first in the nice rival trope alongside Brandon/May, which was a nice break from Blue and Silver, those jerks. At first, Wally is shy and reserved, but he has a hidden determination to accomplish his goals. He is a Pokemon lover and spends a lot of time just studying them, as evidenced by his room in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. A major part of his story is his battle with a mysterious illness that leaves him, according to his parents, frail and sickly. While they never reveal what the sickness actually is, we get a few hints that point towards a lung problem such as asthma. One example of said hints is the fact that Wally moves from Petalburg to Verdantuf to live with his uncle for a while due to the air being cleaner in the town. While I can't know for sure what he actually has, as a kid that grew up with severe asthma, I am quite fond of that theory. Going to the hospital unable to breathe properly and being seen as frail are not uncommon things for me, as I'm sure they are not uncommon things for anyone with asthma, so it's nice to feel represented. And before anyone gets worried, my asthma improved a lot as I grew up. It was really only an issue as a kid, nowadays it's practically gone. But anyway, this is about Wally. Against all odds, at least as perceived by his family, Wally manages to set out on a journey by himself and become one of the best Pokemon trainers around. And this journey changes quite a bit between games. In Emerald, which for this video was the version I played between the original three, we first meet Wally upon entering our dad's gym in Petalburg. He asks for Norman's help getting a Pokemon as he would feel lonely going by himself to Verdantuf. Being as lazy as his name's lacking, the man decides to shove the responsibility of helping Wally onto us and we set out to get the kid a Pokemon. Under our supervision, he quickly finds and catches a Ralts, much to the dismay of many players who spent half an hour trying to encounter one in the same patch of grass. After catching Ralts, Wally thanks us, saying he'll take really good care of it, and leaves. The next time we run into him is all the way in Malville, by the door to the third gym. He is begging his uncle to let him challenge the gym, saying that if he combines forces with Ralts, he can beat anyone. His uncle is reluctant, thinking the boy is jumping the gun a bit, and Wally decides to fight us to prove he's a capable trainer. However, his hopes are quickly dashed when we wipe the floor with him. He then realizes that having Pokemon and making them battle is not enough to be a trainer, and agrees to go back to Verdantuf, his uncle in tow, saying that there's nothing stopping him from one day becoming stronger. If you follow the duo to Verdantuf, you can find Wally in his uncle, aunt and cousin's house. He claims to not be upset about losing as he has a new purpose in life, to challenge gyms and become a great trainer. He finishes his speech by telling us to watch him as he'll become stronger than us, and when he does, he'll challenge us to a battle. I can't wait, buddy. From here on out, the next time you actually meet him is in the Victory Road. Yep, that's right, all the way at the end of the game. This is because after you deal with the evil teams at Mount Chimney, Wally runs away from his relative's house, leaving everyone worried. Kids these days, incredibly irresponsible, I tell you. But jokes aside, you can actually keep tabs on the guy. From then on, you can call him and he'll occasionally change his dialogue, but that's about it. You can't find or directly interact with him until the end of the game. Upon entering Victory Road, he catches up to us and says that losing to us in Malville made him stronger, and that he would win for the Pokemon who gave him courage and strength. His team this time is indeed quite a bit stronger, but not enough to save him. It's still an easy battle, all things considered. After losing, he just says that he couldn't beat us, but he would catch up to us one of these days. And that's it. Well, kinda. After the credits roll, you can fight Wally once a day at the end of Victory Road, and he has a slightly stronger team, but nothing new is presented in terms of Wally lore, unfortunately. So what do you think? No, not about my storytelling skills, I know those are pretty good. I mean about Wally's role in Pokemon Emerald. I sorta struggle calling him a rival simply because he's just not really a part of our journey. He barely participates in the game, which is really just a damn shame. But again, more on that later. For now, let's talk about the parallel world of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. In these games, Wally's journey starts off similar enough to the original games. We meet him in Petalburg and help him catch a Pokemon. Then he leaves for Verdantuf and we only meet him again in Malville, where he is trying to convince his uncle to let him challenge the gym. Once again, he asks to fight and we whoop his ass, making him agree to go back to Verdantuf. From there, however, his tale differs. See, this time, upon visiting the uncle's house in Verdantuf, you don't see Wally. Oh no. Instead, you see his uncle saying that he left to train. Then, after clearing the 5th gym, you have an extra Wally appearance in Petalburg. He is visiting his family and everyone remarks about how much better the boy seems to be doing. Norman then tells us where to go next and we take off towards Malville with Wally before he takes his leave, only to show up again at the end of the game. By the time we beat Groudon or Kyogre and clear the sky from the torrential rain or scorching sun, we get a montage of characters we've met looking at the sky, and Wally is one of these characters. He seems to be already in Evergrande City, meaning he's done with the gyms. As such, it should come to no surprise that our next proper encounter with the boy is in Victory Road. Not at the beginning this time, but rather at the end. We fight him in what's likely one of the prettiest arenas in the game and end his dreams of beating us. Nah, just kidding, the guy is determined. As such, unlike Emerald, this is not his last relevant appearance in these games. During the Delta episode, we visit Wally's house to find out that his keystone used to Mega Evolve his Gallade was stolen. He doesn't really know what happened, but decides to stay home and protect his parents. Then, after the episode is over, we meet him again over at Battle Resort. We first enter it with him and can then unlock one last fight against him with an extremely powerful team, peaking at a level 81 Gallade. The super boss we've always known Wally would become. And if you're wondering why I'm only showing a picture of his team here, it's because this team is locked behind clearing part of the Battle Mason, and while I enjoy working on videos, I am not nearly as much of a masochist as I would need to be to try to unlock this fight, even for a video, so, you know, the picture will have to do. And that's it for Wally's appearances throughout both games. If you were paying attention, you probably noticed that there were details I glossed over, and if you know about this topic, you definitely noticed that I didn't mention a lot of things that were changed in ORAS, but that's intentional. I just wanted to highlight Wally's actual appearances in the games before diving into the details that were changed and what I believe these changes mean for the character. The first thing I want to talk about is how much better Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are at offering a background for Wally. In the original games, when you first enter his house in Petalburg, you find an environment that mirrors the other random NPC houses in the game. That is to say, it's just a square room that doesn't even have a toilet, let alone beds or anything like that. There is a TV though. Who needs sleep when you can watch your favorite TV show, am I right? And yes, I am totally calling a bunch of you out, including myself, honestly. Anyway, in a well-needed yet still unexpected move, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire changed that and gave Wally's house an entire second floor, his room. There is a lot you can interact with in there. His bookshelf is full of books about raising Pokémon and Pokémon battling, all of which are covered in sticky notes. The picture books next to the bookshelf are Pokémon related. The map of Hoenn on his wall is covered in notes about which Pokémon can be found around Petalburg City. The TV is tuned to a channel with a show about how to train to win battles. The notebook on the desk looks like someone has written and erased stuff in it multiple times. Hell, even the glove has pins stuck in Kalos and Unova, the then two most recent regions in the Pokémon multiverse. All of these were elements that really added to Wally's characterization. We already knew he loved Pokémon, sure, but I at least had no idea it was to this extent. And I guess it makes sense, if his illness really is that bad, staying home and studying is probably the safest way to spend his free time. Plus, if his illness was a detriment to his ability to travel, it would make sense for him to spend time daydreaming about where he would go, hence the pins on Unova and Kalos. I mean, it makes sense, I guess, for anyone to daydream about traveling regardless of an illness, but hey, it can still be an extra motivation. I would also like to point out that this is a clear example of why, in life, theory often does not entirely translate to real-life skills. His studies gave him enough skills to command Norman's Pokémon and catch his own, but that's about it. He only really understood what it took to be a trainer after getting his ass whooped by us in front of Malville Gym. Until then, much as he undeniably loved his Pokémon, he still only had a single, under-leveled route. In fact, it's fair to say that this fight changed Wally as a person, and the remakes really try to make this fact more obvious with several additions. though I would say the overall goal had mixed success. One of the changes in this direction was the Petalbug cutscene after gym number 5. It bridged the huge gap between this fight and the next time we met him in the originals, Victory Road. But not only that, the cutscene was meant to show us that he really stepped it up since the Malville encounter. Both Norman and his father remarked that he's doing much better and seems to have evolved a lot, and we get to see a more confident side of him as he plans a route and suggests we go together to Malville. It would have been nice to battle him and feel the evolution that way, but oh well, step in the right direction and all. But the biggest change related to this was regarding his actions immediately after the defeat. In both games, he leaves his uncle's house to go on a journey by himself. However, in the originals, he does so by running away from home, cluing only his mom into defeat. In fact, his father even flat out refuses to believe you when you tell him at the end of the game that you met Wally in Evergrande City. He's like, oh, don't be silly, he's feeling better, but he would never manage that. In the remakes, however, as soon as you first visit the uncle's house, Wally is already gone. Not only that, but everyone knows about that fact and is supportive of his decision. When talking to the uncle in the house, what he first says is very representative of Wally as a person, and really serves as an example of this thesis that everyone's supportive. He says, and I quote, "If you're looking for Wally though, I'm afraid he's gone. After he lost you in Malville, he said he had to train more and we haven't seen him since. It must be his Pokémon that have lit such a fire in that boy and given him so much hope to live for." In the very cutscene I just talked about after gym number 5, the father is also shown to be supportive, as not only he knows about Wally's traveling, but also even says to Norman after we leave that seeing his little boy all grown up and going off on his own makes him happy and a little sad at the same time. This is a stark contrast to his father from the original games, who was blissfully unaware his kid was running around Hoenn and couldn't even believe he reached Evergrande City. So yeah, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire employed the strategy of making people talk about Wally to show how much he improved after the first fight. And the strategy doesn't stop there, oh no, the world building itself also spells it out for us. When you're traveling through the route that leads to Fortree, if you tune into the Hoenn News Network, you're met with news about a young man who has been defeating gym after gym around Hoenn. If you're playing as Brandon, another guy, you might even be excused in thinking that they are talking about you, given that all channels seem to think of you, the player, as the best thing since sliced bread. However, the lady quickly specifies by saying that he's known to his friends and family as Wally. We also learn from this broadcast that his routes evolved and he has more members in his team. And if you take a moment to read the gym statues, you know, the ones that say who beat the gym, you will see Wally's name before yours in every single gym after gym number 3. After losing to you, Wally works so hard that he takes off and stays ahead of you every step of the way from then until Victory Road. This is only further confirmed by, again, the Petalburg gym cutscene in which he greets us being the player Norman, by saying that he hasn't seen us in some time. Given that he beat Norman before we did, one can only assume this means he managed to do so at the very least entire days prior to us, else he wouldn't be saying that he hasn't seen Norman in quite some time. And then when we quell Primal Groudon or Kyogre's anger and get a cutscene of the Emerald Light clearing the skies, we see that Wally is already in Evergrande City, just about to enter the Victory Road. While these changes are all great, there is a reason why I said they had mixed success in achieving their goal. One key aspect to this discussion that was a part of Pokémon Emerald was the phone that you could use in your Dex Nav. Throughout the game, you could call anyone to get their thoughts on the most random subjects, and one of the people you could call was Wally. While the world itself didn't pay attention to the boy, we did learn what he accomplished directly from him, even if it wasn't as in-depth or effective at showing the impact he was leaving in the world as the ORAS solution was. For example, instead of learning on the news that Wally's routes evolved, he himself tells us all about it if you call him around the time you deal with the evil teams in Mount Pyre. Similarly, if you call him around the time the crisis with Groudon and Kyogre is happening, you get a text saying the number you're trying to reach is currently outside of service area. Now, I don't know about you, but I always lose phone signal in tunnels or caves, so to me, that indicates what the ORAS cutscene does. He's already inside the Victory Road by the time we reach Sutopolis. Even the fact that he left his uncle's house is told to us directly by Wally himself, as well as by his loved ones. If you call him around the time you beat Lava Ridge Gym, he says that he left his uncle's place without telling anyone, wonders if his uncle is furious with him, and asks if we understand how he feels. I do, Wally, I do. This reveals a degree of uncertainty in his decision that is simply lost in the ORAS remakes because we just don't get to hear Wally's version of the events, although some would argue that losing this uncertainty is for the best. Furthermore, ORAS takes a whole different approach to Wally's safety net. In the originals, Wally has to run away from home, presumably because people see him as sickly and frail, and would never allow him to go out on his own. In ORAS, however, everyone supports him. This is overall a good change because kids should have supportive parents, though perhaps not to the extent of letting them travel without assistance while facing a deadly disease that constantly flares up, but I digress. Not my kid and all that. However, this good change does come at the cost of undermining Wally's determination, and the impact of just how much the Malville battle shook the young man. In the originals, we actually see more of the fire that the ORAS uncle claims was lit under Wally. It does take, after all, a tremendous amount of willpower and determination to run away from home to pursue your dream, especially when you have an illness to worry about. In ORAS, he has his family's support. Now, don't get me wrong, it still takes a lot of courage to go off on your own even when you have your family's support, but it just doesn't feel as impactful, at least not in this story. This is why I say the goal of showing Wally's changes better than the original games had mixed success. They were here and they were great, but they sacrificed some of the more fascinating aspects of Wally from the original games. An extra showing of determination and the ability to talk to him and learn about his thoughts during his own journey. I really wish they had kept the phone calls in, but, you know, at least the determination thing ended up not making too much of a difference because they decided to compensate for it elsewhere, right in his Victory Road fight. And this is perhaps my favorite change in the entirety of the remakes and consolidated Wally as one of my favorite characters in Gen 3. In the original games, Wally's Victory Road fight is right at the beginning of the cave. Like, literally, I'm pretty sure you can reach it with less than 50 steps after entering the cave. Hell, it's probably less than 25, but I didn't bother counting. You can count for yourself on the footage that's ongoing right now on the video if you really want to know the number of steps. Just please let me know in the comments if you do count the steps, because such an effort deserves recognition. Regardless, it's nice to see Wally there, but he's just one guy out of many in the cave. In fact, chances are he is your first fight, and really not that much tougher than any other random ass trainer. In Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire though, the situation is very different. When I first played through the games, I wondered where the hell Wally was because he just wasn't showing up, until he did. That's right, instead of being the first obstacle in your Victory Road journey, he is the very last one. This by itself is already a massive difference that puts him above every other trainer in the cave, showing that he already got to the end and was just training to improve. But Game Freak went so much further than just changing this one detail. Wally now has a whole room to himself, a field of flowers within the cave. His dialogue at the beginning of the fight is expanded and does a better job at showing his determination. His team, while mostly the same when compared to his Emerald counterpart, now boasts a Mega Gallade instead of a Gardevoir. But while these are great changes, there are two that I believe were the most crucial to Wally's development. When you turn a GBA game into a fully 3D game, you end up with a lot more to work with in terms of your ability to demonstrate a character's emotions. In Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, Wally was just a sprite that may be moved when starting a battle. In ORAS, however, Wally is a full 3D model, and that was absolutely put to good use by Game Freak. And yes, I promise I'm getting somewhere with this. Take a look at this footage of our very first fight with Wally back in Malville. Notice how Wally behaves when starting the fight. He is slightly hunched forward. His eyebrows show uncertainty. His Pokeball throw is unrefined and causes him to stumble forward when tossing the ball. He's very clearly a beginner, not at all confident in his abilities. Now, fast forward to his model in Victory Road and how he starts the fight then. This time he's standing up straight, holding onto his pendant to give him strength. He has a fierce and confident look on his face. He quickly nods to his Pokeball before throwing it in acknowledgement of his Pokemon's efforts so far. And his throw is perfected, not a single bit of hesitation, nor does it make him stumble forward. It's genuinely impressive how well Game Freak put the animations and 3D models to good use here, making them perfectly demonstrate Wally's development throughout the game. Even more impressive when you consider that animations and models are not something they are normally very good at, given the Gen 8 and 9 fiascos, or even how in Gen 7 our player character always just had a dumb smile on their face. But here they nailed what they had to nail. So while this change from Emerald was very much a consequence of working on a beta system, it's still great that they managed to work this beta system in favor of Wally's characterization. That being said, however, this isn't even my favorite change. The battle soundtrack is. In order to properly appreciate it, however, one must first analyze its surrounding context. Before you reach Wally, you hear a soundtrack that plays for, I think, most of the Victory Road. As soon as you enter the room, however, all melodies cease, and all we hear are the sounds of rushing water, which makes sense given that water surrounds the arena. Then we see Wally. The calming tune we hear in the start of the game fills our ears while we talk to our old friend, marveling at his accomplishment of getting to the end of the journey before us. Soon enough, he says that standing there, facing us, gives him chills. The camera then closes in on Wally. The music abruptly stops again. Let me tell you, when I was first playing this game, my jaw dropped. How did Wally, of all people, get such a badass theme? And most importantly, why was I so moved by it? But when preparing for this video, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. This theme does fit Wally extremely well, and his very arena will help me explain why. See, one thing that never sat right with me was the contrast between this arena and the soundtrack. We're fighting in a field of flowers gently swaying on the wind. This begs for a calming, chill song. It's just the vibe, you know? Warm sunlight, a field of flowers, slow movement, and yet we got one of the most hype songs in the game's soundtrack, if not in the damn franchise. How? Why? Those were the questions that I tried hard to answer for this video, and I think I arrived at a satisfying answer. This fight is a perfect match for Wally himself. This jarring tonal dissonance is absolutely intentional. People in Wally's life, especially in the original games, see him as this frail and sickly kid that needs to be cared for, much like a gentle field of flowers that can easily be eradicated by outside forces. However, in both games, Wally has proven that he doesn't see himself the way others do. In fact, the hardships, be it his illness or his defeat to us, make him all the more determined to come out on top. It really doesn't fit with the idea everyone has, much like the guitar doesn't directly fit with the background shown in the fight. He doesn't let others define him, much like the soundtrack isn't defined by the arena. This is the realization that made me most excited to write this video, because I really wanted to talk about it with someone. This fight is a brilliant allegory to Wally's life and who he is as a person. And given how determined he is and how much he manages to turn his life around in a short span of time, yeah, this music is incredibly fitting. And as icing on the cake, upon losing, he screams out in frustration, clearly no longer afraid or too shy to show his emotions. Anyway, there's more I could talk about in terms of changes and how I interpret them, but I think you get the gist by now. While the remakes did lose out on some aspects of the original, it overall brought a lot of good changes to Wally and made him a memorable character, at least to me. However, when I first started researching this video, I set out to answer one question. Do all these changes make Wally a good rival? And the answer to that is, well, it's complicated. Really complicated. Let me start by saying that I genuinely think Wally is a good character when looked at in a vacuum. He is kind and has a determination that I think most of us are unable to match. He is one of those few people who are actually able to chase their dreams and manage to not let any obstacle stop them. That's honestly something to be admired and perhaps even envied. Plus, the trope of overcoming an illness and coming out on top may be overused, but it's still a trope I'm really fond of, so it's nice to see Pokemon tackling it. The problem is, however, that we are not looking at Wally in a vacuum. He is inserted in a game in which we play as someone else, and that's where things get a bit murky. See, when I looked into Wally's reception, I was shocked to see mixed opinions on the boy. But the more I researched, the more it made sense. There are some valid complaints to be had in how he was presented, even in the remakes. There are two main problems, and they are intrinsically related. Wally has no role in the actual story of the game, and due to that, he barely shows up, and thus we don't see his gradual development. We only hear about it until we meet up with a badass at the end of the game. And I mean, yeah, I understand why this bothers people. The first point can be observed all throughout the game. Wally barely ever shows up and is never involved with Team Magma or Team Aqua. In fact, I'm pretty sure he only meets them in the Battle Resort in the remakes when he runs into the team leader in True Admins, quickly apologizes and continues running anyway. Brandon or May, on the other hand, despite not being great rivals, still help us in our situation in moments such as when we go after Professor Cosmo. Honestly, I'm not even asking Wally to run into danger with us, just being able to talk to him about current world events would help him feel connected to the plot. But no, he isn't. He's only connected to the Delta episode plot, and even then he only shows up to say his keystone was stolen. Some of you might not be bothered by the fact that Wally's tale is more or less isolated from the rest of the game, but it does open up an interesting discussion within writing as a whole. Should all characters written within a story contribute to its plot? The answer is obviously not. Supporting characters like random NPCs or a bartender or whatever exist to populate the world and serve specific functions. Wally, however, is not a supporting character. He has a unique appearance, unique interactions, and a personal storyline that we get updates on. He is not just there to serve a specific function like a Nurse Joy, for example, who must be there to heal your Pokemon. He is actually part of your journey, or meant to be. And thus, the question: must all characters that have some prominence in the story contribute to its plot? I genuinely have no idea, so I'm hoping to gather some insights from all of you who have experience with writing, or at least an opinion on the matter. On a personal level, however, I can tell you that it doesn't bother me. I can still appreciate Wally's story for what it is, even if it is more isolated from the rest of the tale. But a lot of people didn't, as they feel a rival should be more involved. And normally, I agree. The problem here, however, is that, at least in my perception, Wally is not our rival. We are his rival. And yes, I promise there is a difference. One of the few changes in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is that, upon beating him in Malville, Wally tries to ask us if he can call us his rival, but he never manages to finish the sentence because he's too shy to do so. However, from then on, his goal becomes to surpass us, even stating that when he's stronger than us, he'll come back to challenge us to a battle. This also explains his outburst at the end of his ORAS fight in the Victory Road. The dude accomplished the major feat of starting his gym journey 3 badges behind us and still finishing before us. He conquered the Victory Road. He mastered the secret of Mega Evolution. He overcame his illness. All of this, and his efforts, were still not enough to beat his rival, hence the outburst. To us, however, he is not really a factor. He doesn't get involved in the story, and for the entire game up until Victory Road, we just know that he's that weak trainer with an underleveled route. He doesn't constantly show up to challenge us with an ever-evolving team. He doesn't talk to us about the plot. He just vanishes to train. So how could we see him as a rival? He was just one more trainer we beat in Malville. But to him, we were this insurmountable obstacle that he needed to clear no matter what, and that gave him motivation to accomplish everything he did. So in a way, I feel as though his absence serves as evidence of the fact that he is not our rival, but rather just a friend, or perhaps even an acquaintance. However, I do feel as though this was the wrong choice on Game Freak's part, as it simply made people not connect with Wally and wonder what his role in the game even is. To make matters worse, all of what I just said he accomplished was never shown. We have no idea how he got a keystone. We have no idea how he overcame his illness. We have no idea how his battles at the gyms went, or even the order he tackled them in. So how are people supposed to care about the character when they can't actually see the development happening? Players are just told it happened off screen and that's it. That's all we get. Even just one more fight against Wally would help, as we would see, I don't know, an improved team, an improved Pokeball throw, whatever. And at the same time, while I get this complaint, I also understand why the decision was made to keep Wally away from us. At least I think I do. Wally's journey is very personal, and our lack of involvement in it reflects that. He is on a journey to achieve his dream and fight his illness, and that's something only he can do. He's set on doing what he wants, or hell, needs to do, and there's really not a space for us or anyone else. While I can respect that, I don't think it works for a video game in which we play as the someone else. Maybe if we played as Wally, this would work a lot better, but as he's currently presented, Wally just feels underutilized in the game. This is all to explain why I believe the question about whether or not Wally is a good rival is a really hard one to answer. Hell, I don't even think he is a rival. But I think my answer is that he is a good character, one of my favorites, but that unfortunately he was not utilized well within the context of the game's storylines, making a lot of people not really care for him. Funnily enough, this issue is pretty much fixed in the manga, a theme that's becoming very common in my Pokemon related videos, like in my analysis of Pokemon Sword and Shield. In those titles, the manga pretty much fixed every issue I had with the story, and trust me, there were many. I was really proud of that video, by the way, so you should 100% check it out if you have the chance. Link is on your screen right now, probably top right. But anyway, back to Wally. In the original manga, he received a much bigger role than what we saw in any of the games. We see how he fights his pulmonary illness, for example, which is already a huge step forward. There, he uses a quite badass looking respirator suit, and Norman even brings him to Skypillar to train his lungs by using the altitude. That's my headcanon for the games now. Norman forced the boy to scale tall stuff to train his lungs, and that's how he improved. I mean, the games don't tell us anything about his development, so we might as well make stuff up, right? But Wally's biggest role in the manga was to actually awaken Rayquaza so that the Pokemon can stop Groudon and Kyogre's fight. All of this not only gives us more time with Wally, making us feel more connected to him, but it also gives him a vital role in the plot of the game, fixing the problem I mentioned lots of people have about him being more or less disconnected from everything. In the games, this wouldn't work that well, as the player needs to be involved in awakening Rayquaza and pretty much everything else that's interesting, else it just feels like we're being left out. And we know this thanks to, again, Sword and Shield. They tried to leave us out of the action there on account of us being kids and all, but it just felt terrible to be told that there's something going on and we can't participate. It just feels like we're playing with the wrong protagonist, you know? Thus, similarly, Wally wouldn't be able to do something so major in the game without our involvement, but he could tag along and we could watch him do it. That would do the trick. Or even better, make the game have dual protagonists and we constantly swap between Brandon/May and Wally. Now that would be a really novel concept for Pokemon. One more thing I couldn't really fit anywhere is the small curiosity that Pokemon Legends Arceus brought us. One of the characters, Benny, looks a lot like Wally, implying that he's Wally's ancestor. The dude is also a badass ninja, so I guess we know where Wally got his determination and prowess from. Kinda hoping for a sequel in which he takes up the ninja mantle, but hey, that's just wishful thinking. Anyway, I think that's about it for all I wanted to say. Like I mentioned in the beginning, my plan here is to create a discussion about the character and hear more opinions on the subject, because I'm really not satisfied with my own just yet. Do you all like Wally? Do you think he's a good rival or character? Are you satisfied with how he was presented in the games? Are you satisfied with his role in the story? If not, what would you change to fix whatever problems you have with the character? And going a bit beyond the Wally discussion, what's your opinion on the writing question I posed? Do you think every character that's part of a story needs to have a role in it? These questions are just to give you an idea of what to provide an opinion on, but feel free to comment on anything. I'm happy with whatever you guys want to say, as long as it's not, you know, super mean or breaks rules or stuff like that. Just use common sense, I know you guys have it. And if you got this far in the video and want more content, I am pleased to inform you that I have 5 other Pokemon videos you can watch if you so desire. One is about the wasted potential of Pokemon Sword and Shield, which I already mentioned. Another is the wasted potential of X and Y. The third is about the appeal of Pokemon Snap. The fourth is about what I find to be the issue with the Pokemon remakes. And the last is about whether or not Lusamine was ruined by Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon. I'm quite proud of all of them, so I hope you enjoy them. I'll link to a playlist with all of them at the end of the video, as well as a random one for your enjoyment. I will also link the playlist in the description just in case I can't link it at the end card for the video. Never tried doing that before, so who knows. Can you tell I'm still learning this YouTube stuff? That all aside, I'd like to honestly thank you for watching. These videos are always a blast to make, but they are also difficult to get done, which is why my uploads are inconsistent at best, especially with a full-time job to take care of. It also doesn't help that I just keep widening the scope of my videos. Take this one, for example. It started off with the idea of making it a 20-minute analysis of the changes ORAS brought to Wally, and it ended up doubling in size and shifting focuses to using the changes as supporting arguments to figure out whether or not he's a good rival. But as I said, this is a creative outlet that I love and plan on keep doing, so if you want to see more, be it Pokemon or other games, as I also cover indie games, please do consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. But above all else, leave a comment with your thoughts, as for me, the best part of making a video is getting to engage with the many different viewpoints out there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you hopefully on the next one. Bye bye!